of believing that it contributes in any way to the start and outbreak of wars, that it's always just the West who's the innocent victim, and the whatever country we happen to be against has turned psychotic or aggressive, and we're there to protect the world from decent things, and it's very ingrained propagandistic belief that I think is very difficult to overcome in any specific case. And here, in particular, the propaganda was so relentless and intense about the start of the war, about why it happened, that I think you're right, it's almost impossible to ever uproot that, and therefore an agreement that requires that, it does seem unlikely. But the question then is, there does seem to be a loss of will, not just in the West, but also now in Ukraine. Zelensky seems to want to deal as well. So if you're saying that it's unlikely for the reasons you laid out, that I agree with, that a permanent peace, a real peace deal is impossible, is there something short of that that will freeze hostilities, but isn't really a real peace deal that you expect or think is possible?
No, you're not going to get a real peace deal. You'll get a frozen conflict. At some point, the Ukrainians will not be able to continue the fight. The Russian steamroller will have conquered enough territory. Ukraine will be so weak, will have lost so many people, that you'll get a frozen conflict. The problem with a frozen conflict is that it may heat up again. And you can imagine all sorts of scenarios where it will heat up. As I like to emphasize, it's important to note that once you get a frozen conflict, the Ukrainians will do everything they can to undermine Russia's position in the areas of Ukraine that it controls. The West, especially the United States, will do everything it can to undermine Russia, and the Russians, for their part, will do everything they can to interfere in Ukrainian politics and maintain Ukraine as a dysfunctional rump state. The Russians will go to great lengths to sow trouble in Europe among the various NATO countries. The Russians will go to great lengths to undermine transatlantic relations. So you're going to have poisonous relations between Russia on one hand and Ukraine and the West on the other hand for as far as the eye can see. This is what happens if you get a frozen conflict. If you were to get a genuine peace agreement, this would not be the case. But as I was saying, I do not see how you get a genuine peace agreement, because it would require Ukraine and the West to recognize Russian conquests up to now, number one, and number two, agree to a neutral Ukraine. And I don't see that happening. And absent that happening, you're going to have a frozen conflict with poisonous relations between the two sides. And Glenn, if I could take this a step further, you want to understand that superimposed on that frozen conflict in Ukraine are 6 flashpoints in Eastern Europe that could blow up in our face. 1 is the Arctic, 2 is the Baltic, 3 is Belarus, 4 is Kaliningrad, 5 is Moldova, and 6 is the Black Sea. These are all potential flashpoints for trouble between the West and the United States, and between the West and Russia. And we should be worried about that greatly, because those flashpoints will exist in this poisonous political environment.
Well, again,